Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome into another Indie Comics Talk. Tonight, I've got with me Melissa Flores, the writer of the awesome new series, The Dead Lucky.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about the book.
Thank you for coming on. I saw you post on Twitter. You're like, I want to go on and talk about the book, and I was like, yes. Excited to read it, and then the timing worked that we got to do this after the first issue, so lots to talk about from that.
For sure, I'm excited to do it.
Yeah. So for those that maybe haven't read the book yet, haven't been introduced to you yet, give us a little bit about your background and what got you into writing comics here.
Sure. I have been in the entertainment industry pretty much my whole professional life, with exception to a few years. But most of that time, I was a creative executive or development executive in that field, which is basically we are not the writers or the content creators. We are the people that hire the writers and the content creators to create stories based on either IP that we own or develop their own stories and then put it on a network or wherever else it's going to be. So for my most recently, I was the director of storytelling for Hasbro for Power Rangers, and before that, Saban Brand. So I was with Power Rangers a good 10 years, and working my way up from a coordinator to a director, basically doing that role. And basically, what that meant for Power Rangers was that anything that had a story. My job was basically the lore master, the brand master, to make sure that people, one, that it stayed within the rules that we thought worked for that particular story, whether it was in comics or feature television series or whatever, and two, that it was the best version of that story that could be told for our brand, which was Power Rangers. So we did crazy fun things, like we did Meower Rangers, which was on YouTube, which was about a bunch of cats that were Power Rangers. We did, the 2017 feature film, which I still am very proud of. And one of the big things that we did, and probably my favorite thing that I did working on Power Rangers, was the Boom Studios Power Ranger books, which just are going on to issue 100 now.
Yeah.
And through that, I had loved comics for a while, and I'd loved comics ever since I played the video game Injustice.
Okay.
And I bought the deluxe version because I just was obsessed with that game. I just thought the story was just so fun and cool. And it came with like the Injustice comic book, like the issue 1 that was written by Tom Taylor. And I remember finishing that first issue and I'm like, that's it? What? No, I need to find out what else is going on. Yeah. And so I had ended up getting the year 1 and year 2 hardcovers and just like devoured those. And so it was Tom Taylor's books that just like got me obsessed with comic books. But then it was through working with Boom Studios on these books and with, at the time, Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott, that I really started to appreciate the craft of comic books and the incredible work that it takes to put them together, and also the freedom to tell these incredible stories in those books. And we did some really cool things with Power Rangers that hadn't been done. And through that, Kyle and I became friends. So when he left Power Rangers, we stayed friendly. And then when I eventually left Power Rangers some years later, we again were friends. And at the time, he had put out this book called Radiant Black, which was incredible. It's still incredible, really fun book. And it was doing very, very well. And so well, in fact, that they wanted to expand it into a universe for Image. And thankfully, by that time, Ryan knew that Kyle knew that I was trying a different approach in my career. I was kind of done with being an executive. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to tell my own stories.
Yeah.
And I had already done a few little stories for him. And so he asked me, do you want to write a superhero book for Image? And if you do, come up with an idea and come up with a city that you think your hero could live in and get back to me. And then we'll see about putting together a pitch. So like who in the right mind would say no to that?
Right.
So I said yes, of course. Um, Developed an idea that I had kind of sitting in my head a little bit. It was completely for this world, but it was based on this want that I wanted to tell a story heavily inspired by my partner's military experience, because I
Yeah.
think her life is really interesting and very cool. Um, and that's how I ended up with the Dead Lucky. And we, with Kyle's help, we found an artist. We put together a pitch, and thankfully, Image liked what they read and greenlit the
Go
book.
for it.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, speaking of the art is just like,
Yeah, it's really good. And so the suit itself is designed by an artist named Federico Sabatini, who is Italian, amazing guy. I think he's on Moon Knight right now. Really talented, very cool, and he put together an amazing suit for us. And then the actual everything else is by French Carlo Magno. I think that's how you say his name.
yeah,
One day I'm going to get to know him in real life instead of just Zoom chats and emails, and he's
right.
going to tell me how to pronounce his name correctly so I don't butcher it. But he does all the other art. He does the art on the book, and he's incredible as well. So very lucky to have the artists that I had working on this book with me, and thankfully they're super passionate about the story, which is always very helpful when you're working on an indie comic.
Right. It's good to have that back and forth where you guys can work collaboratively and take the story even cooler places.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. And Mattia, the colorist, is incredibly passionate, and so is Becca. And I have an incredible editor in Michael Busuttil, and also Kyle consults on every single book. So, and also my partner consults on every single book just to make sure it feels authentic from the perspective of a soldier. So I have a really good team of people giving me some really great advice, and thankfully I think it worked out. Like the Dead Lucky with the first issue, which I think most people liked. There was one review that threw me a little bit, but most people really liked it, and that's due to the amount of people that the amount of support I had working on the book.
Yeah,
which I'm very thankful for.
After reading kind of the bit at the end about your partner's experience and how you wanted to bring that into the book, going back, I'm rereading it and I'm like, yep, it's right here. It's here. All of these types of things are really brought out. So I feel like this would be a book that would connect pretty well with veterans who've gone through some of this.
I hope so. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to make a fun superhero book, but I want it to feel real. And every story I tell, I want it to feel grounded and represent something in some way that I don't feel is as represented as it could be.
Yeah.
That I feel like is something that is a calling or a role for me, especially I'm female, I'm Latino, I'm a child of immigrants, and I am gay. And those are a lot of other in the world. And given that, I feel like if I can tell stories that maybe aren't in a way that everybody can relate to them, but still highlight maybe people that you don't see every day, that's what I'd really love to do. And so I feel like a lot of people tell stories about Army veterans, but it becomes a very Punisher kind of just explains their badassery and not necessarily mentally how it's affected them, and the idea that the majority of them just want to live, just want to like live in this world and figure it out, and that's kind of where I was going with BB.
Let's say, I mean, I'm probably someone who gets way overrepresented in comics. I'm a straight white man. I don't need more of me in comics. I don't. So I like to see those stories that are reaching people who maybe aren't seeing themselves as much in comics. I think that's such an important thing.
It was really interesting to me because I went to C2E2 this past weekend in Chicago, and it was right after the book launched. And honestly, I was shocked at the amount of Latino people who came up to me, because BB's biracial, she's Chinese and Mexican, came up to me and were just so emotionally overwhelmed that there was a superhero in the Massiverse that was Latino.
That's so awesome.
And
to
Yeah,
hear
it
that.
was incredible. I did not I live in Los Angeles, you know, and I've had a very fortunate career in that I've been in very high level rooms and I've been, you know, I've been very fortunate in my career. And
Yeah,
so I sometimes take that for granted. I think that that the color of my skin, maybe if I lived anywhere else might be more of a factor than it is.
yeah,
And and so it really was very touching to me that I didn't realize how important it would be to people to see a Latino character being portrayed. And I really hope I'm not Asian as well. I'm not Chinese, but you know my
right.
partner is, and so I really hope that uh, people who are Chinese can also feel that way about BB too. Uh,
Yeah,
both I think are underrepresented.
absolutely. And to see, that representation on such a platform as a book in the massive verse coming out
Yeah,
from Image, I think that makes it even more. Uh, it reaches that audience even
yeah.
easier because it's out there reaching them through. I guess if it was like a very small publisher, it's harder to get that to the people who
Yeah.
need it.
Well, it's also one of those things, and I think this is one of the things that I really loved with working about Power Rangers, and something that I think is very important to myself is that, you know, I am all these other things, but at the end of the day, when I look at myself, I am me. I
Right.
am this American professional who writes, and that is how I see myself.
Yeah.
You know, I just happen to be gay, female, and Latina.
Exactly.
And but I never let that define. That is not all of me, right? It just happens to be a little part of me. And I think for a lot of Latinos, we're asked to consume media where that's all they want us to be.
Mhm.
Just or even when you're gay, they're just like, this is a gay show. And this is the only this is just all gay all the time. This is
Right.
all we want you to be. Just gay, 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 gay. Well, that's not us. You know, that's one part of who you are. Just like, you know, you're white male, but you've got all these other things that make you interesting, right?
Yeah.
Um, the same, and the same thing with a lot of Latino shows or a lot of shows that
Absolutely.
are seen as, you know, Latino. They're expected to carry the narrative for all Latinos everywhere, and that is unfair because we are so different, and
Yeah.
so many of us have more than I think a lot of other cultures have been forced to. Or it's not harder, but it's easier for us to assimilate.
Yeah.
Um, and so we still see ourselves as a culture. I still see myself as Mexican, but I forgot how to speak Spanish when I was 12. I had to relearn it because I
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to speak Spanish in school. And so so what I really want to do is just BB happens to be these things, but she
Exactly.
does not see herself as any of those things. What she sees herself is as a soldier.
Mhm.
And that is the perspective that the book comes from. Like yes, she happens to be pansexual, she happens to be biracial, but that's always just part of who she is. It's never
Yeah.
informs her whole personality.
Absolutely. I mean that I looking at across the board with comics, it's some of them are just they pigeonhole. It's you are like Captain America is the all he is the shield,
Yeah.
right? And he's got to be doing that all the time, but off screen, there's other stuff going on. There's characters have lives that should be fully fleshed out, and it's not just one thing that they are. And so I think that comes across super well with the Dead Lucky, with Bibiana and her character development, even in just the first issue where there's a lot going on. Um,
Yeah, it was a challenge I thought because I don't want to bore people with exposition, but this is a slightly different world that we're setting up here. And so
yeah,
we have to do it really quickly and really fast, but also not in a way that people are just like, this is just an exposition dump. And I don't know how successfully we accomplished that, but we tried to do it in an interesting and fun way with
hmm
Vivi. So that at least while you were getting this information, you were wondering about other things like why is she talking to me,
yeah.
and why can other
It,
people hear her talk to me? Yeah,
it's like a fourth wall breaking, but then also is it a character quirk? Is it something that happened from her time in the military? All those questions were going through my head as she was doing that. And then the other people kind of were like, oh, you're just being you.
Yeah. Army made you weird. Okay, we get it.
Yeah.
And it was fun to do that, because one, that is a thing that I feel like people can do. It's just like, oh, you're weird. I can assign a reason for that. Done.
Mm-hmm.
Move on. But also, I wanted to keep the audience guessing a little bit. I wanted to make them a little uncomfortable to understand why this is happening, because it's not Deadpool, it's not Gwenpool, it's not even She-Hulk, where they're just talking to
Mm-hmm.
the reader. She is talking to somebody very specific.
Yes.
And it's not until you get to the end of the book that you realize what's happening. And we're going to dive deeper into that in the upcoming issues. But I wanted it to be that last page turn where you're like, hey, oh, and then you go back to the beginning and be like, okay, what did I miss?
Right.
Okay, hopefully it makes sense.
And I think that's a good hook at the end there, right? To say, all right, come back for issue 2 to see what, who are they? What's going on with them? Why are they there?
Yeah.
I'm trying not to like spoil it too much in case someone hasn't read it, but yeah.
Well, Michael, our editor, always had really good advice for every book that I'm writing. He's always saying that there has to be 2 hooks in the first issue of any book that you write. You have to have the one that everybody knows about, and then you have to have the one that everybody doesn't. That is the surprise at the end.
Yeah.
And so for BB, it was the one that everybody knows about is that she's got superpowers and she has a mech. And then the surprise at the end is obviously the one where I don't want to spoil if people haven't read the book, but
yeah,
that explains who she's talking to, not just the reader. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And for me, that last page, I was like, okay. And then also the other reveal that's kind of happening at the same time for the first time within the pages for her.
Yeah.
Still not trying to throw in
Yeah,
I mean, but
it's a delicate balance because we definitely don't explain everything, and it takes a lot of trust, especially from a debut writer, to be like, I don't know where these powers, like I do know where they are coming, but like we don't explain where these powers have come from. We don't explain what the incident is or exactly how it works yet, and there's hopefully enough trust that we don't. I didn't want to do just an origin story in issue 1. I feel like that felt the real story begins when she's back in San Francisco, not when she gets her powers. And so eventually I want to tell that story. But I think it made more, like, I was hoping that the reader would be like, okay, I could just buy that she has these powers and we'll figure out why eventually.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like there's hints of, okay, something happened in her time in the military that are sprinkled in there to give you a taste of, okay, all right, something, and it's going to come later. We'll find out.
And if you see her dossier at the begining with the therapist, there's some redacted stuff in there. So you don't know exactly what she did. But you will eventually. Yeah.
So with having been, kind of on the production and directing side of things for Kyle, how is it kind of working with him from the opposite way and getting to have him being on more of that side for the Massiveverse?
Well, I mean, Kyle is a director at heart. That is what he is. I feel like he writes so he can direct. That is his passion. And honestly, it's been really easy. I have, and I think it's because I worked for a very demanding boss who I love dearly. He's fantastic and he challenged me in every single way. But I have an ego, every writer does, but I don't think it's enough of an ego, especially in this kind of world, for me to not take what he's offering in terms of his expertise and his skills, and not adjust if I have to. I feel like worked with him for 6 years now.
Yeah.
I know he's brilliant. I know he's smart. We have a really close relationship and friendship, and that allows us to challenge each other. And so It's really easy, I think. It's actually
Yeah.
a lot better because I think he brought it up at the panel at CDC2E2. He's like, Melissa was our boss. I'm like, oh God, that feels so weird now. Because it just doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, he's eventually, even though the book is creator owned and it's my book, this would not have happened without Kyle. And he's still very much involved in the book, and he's still like, I listen to every note he gives me because I feel like that would be dumb for me not to. And thankfully we have a relationship where if I don't agree with what he says, I can say, hey, I don't agree with that, here's A, B, and C, and then we have a discussion and come to a place where we're both happy. And he still sends me every Radiant Back issue, and I'll tell him like, this is confusing or this doesn't quite work. It comes from a place of mutual respect, and I think that only happens when you work together for as long as we did and on as many different projects as we did. It took time for us to get to that relationship. And even with Ryan Parrott, I mean, Ryan is giving me so much good advice when it comes to Power Rangers, because he wrote Power Rangers for so long that I'm just very lucky, one, that these guys are still in my life and we get to work together still. But two, that they're so freaking brilliant, and I'm able to absorb that knowledge and get better from it. Because I, as good as a development executive as I was, I'm not going to pretend that as a writer I don't have room to grow.
I feel like even the best writer out there has room to grow. Everyone is always striving to, move the needle up higher.
Into anything, right? Like you spend a lifetime learning every single thing. I don't think you ever truly master anything because there's always something else to learn.
Yeah.
And even these past 2 years, I was a good development executive, and I developed a lot of stuff, and I put together stories very well. And I've had people tell me like, you're one of the best producers I've ever worked with. And that sounds really freaking cocky. I'm sorry, but
you didn't say it.
I swear I don't mean it that way.
I said it to you.
But even that coming out and being like, okay, I feel like I'm finally at the step where I have enough of a grasp creatively that I think I can do this, which is in a very competitive field. Even then, these past 2 years, even my skills as a storyteller and as a writer have leveled up incredibly, because I have, like, so where I thought I was a good writer at the beginning and where I am now, like I'm just so excited for the next 2 years, how much better I feel like I'll get.
Right. That's really cool to kind of see that inside side of things where, you're experiencing that growth and you're going through it right now. I know I can get better at doing these interviews, and this channel can get better, and I'm always trying and learning from other people around. So they'll get there. They'll keep getting better.
Same, we both will. And like it's
I may need your tips on lighting and how you've got your microphone.
I'll show you right now. So this is, you're gonna laugh. This is actually a bunk bed with a desk underneath.
No way.
The cool thing, so this is a desk, and then this is a bunk bed. So if you look up here, let me actually put this in here. I'll show you. It's a perfect studio, but it's really just a bunk bed. So if you look up here,
whoa,
there's the rails, right? And so this is just a cloth. This is just a cloth and like some LED lights here. And then I've got these lights that I got on Amazon that sit on my monitors. There's one. Here, let me put this down.
What I need is
there's
like
one,
close lighting,
two, and then I have a wand that adds some backlight here. And then I also have these 2 lights here that I can turn on if I need to. So this wand is great because it gives you some, some dimension in the back, and then also you can change the colors.
That's what I've been trying to.
$50 on Amazon.
Going searching light
stick.
Now. Light stick.
It's a light stick. and then I have you need a third light in the back to give you some fill light in your hair. Because without it, you kind of lose. You see how the dimension goes away?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what this is for. It gives a little bit of dimension in the back.
I have enough. We're getting off topic here, but I have enough book space back here. I could set that up easily.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And I did, and again, I did not know this. I have friends who are influencers, and one of them lived with me for about 10 months, and this was his room, and he set up this desk, and then he
Okay.
moved out, and I just put it back the way he had it.
Like, this is
So
perfect.
again, I did not know how to do this. He taught me, and my friend Megan, who is also my co-writer for Radiant Pink, taught me. She's like, you need dimension in the back, you need this, you need that. So again, it's just soaking in the knowledge of your creative friends. And then this microphone is from my girlfriend. She used to work in audio, and so she's like, hey, do you want this Shure SMB? And now everybody thinks I'm super fancy when I didn't pay for it. It was literally my girlfriend's. So
I've got I guess it's a blue.
the Yeti. That one's cool.
Yeah, that one. And then my problem is I probably need to get like well, now my camera's off, but get a like way to do it so if I hit my desk, I'm not causing extra noise, because I do hit my desk all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is on a tripod, so I can move it. And then it's also I have a Go XLR Mini that helps me like mute out ambient noise, which is why you can't hear the AC. And if my dog barks, that sort of thing, which helps because I do some voice work sometimes.
Nice. Yeah, if I have loud traffic go by near my apartment, it's there. But you mentioned while we were talking about all this Radiant Pink, which was one of the announcements that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
We're going into another part of the Massiveverse here.
Yeah, I'm really lucky for that. So Radiant Pink, not a character I created or had anything to do with it. It was co-created by Kyle and my friend Megan Camarena, who is also known as Strawberry 17. She and I worked together on Power Rangers Hype Force. She was our Pink Ranger, and when I produced it, and we stayed friends. And so, and her and Kyle became friends. And so she is an influencer who works a very busy life, works very hard. And so her and Kyle created this amazing character in Eva, who is a Twitch influencer, also superhero, who's just doing too many things at once at any given time. And when they put together this miniseries, Megan and I had a good enough relationship that they asked me to co-write with them, with her. Awesome. And so we're excited. It's I think it's going to be different than people are expecting, because I think 12 was so focused on her life as a streamer, and we're kind of taking that away from her a little bit. We're putting her in a situation where she cannot stream. She cannot confront anything but her own insecurities.
But that's a good way you got to throw your character into some sort of predicament where they can't be their normal.
Yeah. I mean, the way it's like, it's Bill and Ted meets I don't know what else. Like, it's just a crazy fun romp. Her power is portals. Like, she can portal to different places, and unfortunately she portals too hard and ends up going to a place like not on Earth, and she can't figure out how to get home. And she's not by herself. She's with a girl named Kelly, who just happens to be the person she was rescuing at the time. And so it's like Sliders meets Bill and Ted, but in a really fun, interesting, we go to pretty intense places, because Eva is a really lost character.
Yeah.
And I think she works so hard on her streaming and her superheroing, because if she stops and thinks for a second, she's going to realize that she's not doing super well mentally. And so that's been really fun to break out with Megan. And the first script is really cool. And we have an amazing artist named Emma Kubert, who third generation comic book artist. You cannot. Yeah. I mean, how do you?
I loved her series Inkblot that Image put out.
Yeah, and she's fantastic. And our colorist is very cool. And so it's just a cute, fun. It's going to be surprisingly intense series, and I'm really excited for it.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. That's in previews now or coming next?
Previews are coming very soon. It's going to probably be, we'll know soon when specifically it's going to be out, but I'm thinking late this year.
Okay, awesome. And the other bit of writing news you have comes back all the way back to the start, back to Power Rangers.
Yes, isn't that crazy? Yeah. So I'm going to be taking over for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers after Ryan Parrott leaves the book, which is weird and fun and terrifying at the same time. I did not expect that to happen, that my career as a writer would collide so quickly with my past as a producer. But it is so much fun on this side. I'm going to be super honest. As a creative executive, you kind of are really limited by the rules, and you're the one that has to always say no. And when you're the writer, you're the one that has to hear no. And I'm okay with that, as long as I get to be the one that asks the questions and creates the arcs. And
you get to ask the crazy questions that can be shot down and come up with all kinds of interesting ideas.
And I get to have the challenge, and it is terrifying. I'm not going to lie. It is terrifying because I feel like with me coming back and being the writer on the book, a lot of the people that know Power Rangers and know my work with the brand are going to expect something, which I'm like, can I deliver it? And the only thing I can think of is it was go big or go home, and I went very big. And so they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, and I'm just going to have to make my peace with that. But I am having a blast. The editorial team at Boom Studios is incredible. I have Daphna is no longer on the books officially, but you know, she still contributes, and she's utterly fantastic. I've known her for 6 years, and she consider her one of the smartest, most brilliant, hardworking women in comics. And our editor, Allison, is incredible as well. Just so good. We have an amazing artist. The layouts look fantastic, and we're doing some cool stuff with the lore, which I'm really excited to, because I was there when the first pitch came in with Kyle, and so I've followed the book for 100 issues, and it was a lot of, well, what hasn't been done yet? What can I do? How do I honor what came before me with these incredible writers, you know, Ryan and Matt Groom, Marguerite Bennett, and Kyle Higgins, and also create something of my own that isn't going to step on what they did, but also create a fully fulfilling arc. And hopefully we hit on something really fun that I feel like if I did my job right, it's going to feel seamless.
Yeah.
But we'll find out.
I do have to say, I watched Power Rangers growing up and like was into it, and then I haven't picked up any Power Ranger comics yet. And so, you know, I've been really thinking about it after reading Kyle's work on Radiant Black, and I knew he did the Power Rangers comics as well. And so this may be more of a push, knowing his writing's on there, Ryan's writing's on there. Now your writing's going to be on there. For me, it's probably going to be I'm going to go get the collections and just have a fun binge someday.
They are good. They are very, very good. And I don't just say that because my name's in a lot of them, but Kyle once told me, and it always sat with me, and I had used this advice over and over again the past few years. When he first started Power Rangers, we had done books before. We had done them with other publishers.
Yeah.
And they were always very young, and they felt just like the show. And then here comes Boom Studios, and here comes Kyle Higgins, and he says, I don't want to write the books like the show. Yeah. I want to write the books not as they were, but how they made me feel. And I feel that distinction is very important, because that allows you to age up the books and still be brand appropriate.
Yeah.
And so you're taking true trauma that has happened to these characters and examining, well, what happened? What if we're allowed to take that seriously? What if we're allowed to not resolve anything in 22 minutes and actually really focus on, hey, this teenage kid who didn't have anybody, no family or anything recently, was just overtaken and possessed by this like evil dark witch, and now has to live with the trauma of everything he did.
Yeah.
And these kids that, you know, are teenagers, Like, how do they deal with that? This guy was trying to kill them 2 weeks ago, and now he's their friend. Like, how do you handle that level of trust? And it opened up the world, I think, and did such, I think, some of the coolest things that have come to the lore. Lord Draken, which is an evil Tommy, Ranger Slayer, which is a mind-possessed evil Kim, the Coinless Dimension, the Emprials, the Solar Ranger, which is our first LGBT Ranger. These are characters that we continue to use, or not we specifically, because I'm not with them anymore, but they continue to show up, not just in the books, but in product.
Yeah.
You know, when we did a video game called Battle for the Grid, I hired Kyle to write the story mode for us. And it was Battle for the Grid, which was a retelling of Shattered Grid.
Okay.
And I think very few brands are in that fun place where you're allowed, the comic book writers are allowed to dictate the lore in such an incredible, fun way. And we were one of those few people that were lucky enough in that Power Rangers was a medium-sized brand that had the agency and the trust in our little department to be able to say, hey, no, Kyle, let's have Kyle write the game too. Let's, you know, and it goes to show, I think, what Power Rangers is capable of.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, that's so good to see such interconnectivity across all the mediums there, where comics influence games, which influences products, which influences potential for shows and movies across the board. Whereas, you know, some of the bigger brands, the comics maybe years down the line influence movie creation, but the writers of those comics don't really have much say in where their character goes.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that was always really important to me and my boss and our department, was that we wanted to create true synergy in the brand. I mean, even with Power Rangers Hyperforce, which was a role-playing game, we made sure to include a 2-episode arc where Kyle came on board and helped write those 2 episodes. And he played a sentry, and he also, and then the next episode we brought Jason David Frank, who got to play Lord Draken. And so we were able to have the Hyperforce Rangers be a part of the Shattered Grid event, which was a comic book event, but also have Shattered Grid be a part of Hyperforce. And that only happens when you spend the time to create the relationships with these with these creators. And thankfully, that's something I'm really proud of that we were able to do, that we really, the writers really cared and respected what we did and loved the brand, and also trusted us to be able to say, hey, do you want to go on a live show and just improv, even though you've never done it before, and maybe just, you know, write two episodes for us? And they'll be like, yeah, there's enough trust. I mean, that's how I was able to get a lot of actors from Power Rangers on the Hyperforce.
Yeah.
Because I had spent the time to create these relationships with them, and there was enough trust that even if they didn't do improv, they said okay. And they trusted us to be able to take them through the process, and they had a blast. So it was fun. I don't regret any of my time on Power Rangers. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I feel like so much of it has prepared me for what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that level of what's happened with Power Rangers, I think coming back to write Power Rangers now, you've done the years preparing for it.
Yeah, it was so funny. When I left Power Rangers, I actually got a Power Rangers tattoo. And it was, believe it or not, the Shattered Grid bolt, the lightning bolt of the comic books. And that was my way of saying goodbye to Power Rangers.
Yeah.
That was me being like, hey, this meant a lot to me. This was 10 years of my life. I'm excited that I did this, but I'm ready to move on. And then 2 years later, I get a call from Daphne. I was like, hey, do you want to write Power Rangers? And I'm like, yeah. And it felt so good, because it felt like this is the way that I get to leave Power Rangers the way I want to, in a way, by contributing my own stamp to that lore. And that made me happy.
Is there a tattoo coming in the future then, the return to Power Rangers tattoo?
Haha, no. But I actually really want one of Dead Lucky.
Oh, that would be pretty
I really want one of those. Like, I don't know if I want a Sugar Skull or if I want her helmet, but I want a Dead Lucky tattoo.
Awesome. Hey, Curtis Martins. It's a writer on Duel from.
Oh, very cool.
Why am I blanking on the Bliss on Tap Publishing? But yeah, welcome in. Coming back, since we brought back to Dead Lucky, we're going in circles and a good one. What's what's the, like, not the actual details, but the long-term idea of where the Dead Lucky might fit into the Massiveverse? Because, like I said before we went on, I didn't even realize originally that it was part of Massiveverse.
Yeah.
And you can read this issue and you can enjoy this without even knowing anything about Radiant Black.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we specifically wanted to do with the Massiveverse, and this is something that I feel like every single one of us is on board with, is that we never want to make you feel like you have to read another book to understand what's happening in the book you're enjoying. So if you read Rogue Sun and you only like Rogue Sun, you can read Rogue Sun and not have to worry about Radiant Black or the Dead Lucky. But if you read all the books, you will find elements of the universe that they share together. Yeah. And when you see those true big crossovers, those are going to be limited to more of a supermassive kind of crossover event. And we just announced Supermassive 2, which BB will be a part of. She was teased in the last 2 pages of Supermassive 1, but now she will actively be a part, and I'm helping to write Supermassive 2, which will be really fun. But what we didn't want to do was, and don't get me wrong, DC and Marvel do this incredibly well. But what we didn't want to do was, we didn't want a Dark Crisis page at the end of like Dead Lucky and be like, do you like this arc? Here's 10 other issues that you have to buy in these other books. Right. We're writing for a trade. We want to make sure that when you get a trade, you get a complete arc. Yeah. That is satisfying to read. And that doesn't mean you're not going to see shared elements and you're not going to see shared characters, but you don't have to read the Dead Lucky to understand how that person, like, for example, if a Dead Lucky character shows up in Rogue Sun, you're not going to have to, it's additive. You can be like, oh, I really like this character, I'm going to go read more about them in the Dead Lucky, but you're not going to have to worry about reading Dead Lucky to understand who that person is if they show up in Rogue Sun. And more specifically, like Morrow exists in the world. Yeah. You actually hear people talk about Morrow in the Shift anthology. There's a 4-part Shift or Image anthology. Yeah. There's a 4-part Shift series. Shift is a former contractor of Morrow. Morrow is the big company that is BB's battling in San Francisco. So these elements will pop up, and we work very hard to make sure that we all, thankfully, we all like each other and we're all friends. So we do talk to each other, and be like, hey, can I borrow that? Can I use that? Do you like that? Like, what parts can we play with that isn't going to affect the rest of the stories? So it does feel like a whole universe, but we're not trying to force you to read every book if you don't want to. We want you to enjoy every book only if you enjoy it.
Absolutely. Which so far they've all been fantastic.
Yeah, thankfully. I feel like I'm it was a lot of pressure on me as a first-time writer because all these guys are freaking brilliant. But thankfully people seem to like the book, and it makes me happy. But I also think Kyle wouldn't have let me write a bad book.
Like, no. Well, let's try again. But and I think that speaks to your guys's relationship you've built over the years, and that he could say that to you and you'd be like, okay, I'm gonna.
Oh no, he has. I mean, you should have seen the notes he gave me for issue 2. He's like, and it's funny. I mean, I have a manager too, and he's the same thing. You can't have a lot of ego a lot of times. Even my editor, like, this isn't working for me. You can't be like, oh yeah, but it's genius. Like, you have to be able to talk to them and be like, okay, why isn't it working for you? Here's what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. Right. Okay, let's meet in the middle. Let's find a way to make this work. And I think that was a skill that I learned as a producer, because again, as a producer, your job is to set those boundaries, set those rails that people can play in. And also sometimes a part of that, you're going to have to say no to some things. You're going to have to give really ridiculous notes that don't come from you, that come from people above you, that make zero sense sometimes, and you're going to have to figure out how to make them work and not make the artist want to leave the project because they're so ridiculous. And so it becomes a lot of work on trying to work with the writer and present your notes not as, and this was something that I felt was especially important because I was also a writer doing a job of executive. I don't ever want to show I don't ever want to give, as a producer, I know my job. My job is not to write the story. That's why I hired a writer. My job is to present the note as a challenge for the writer to solve. As a writer, my job is to take the note that the producer is giving me, which, you know, I have other projects that are much more heavy-handed than the ones that I have right now. My job is to take the note that they're giving me and come up with a solution that is going to satisfy, like find the note at the end of the note if it's ridiculous, and understand what they're bumping up against and try to solve for it. And so it's two different roles that you learn very quickly, but I think learning both helps you immensely as a writer.
Yeah.
Because it helps take that ego away and helps take that defensiveness away. So that when Kyle says, this doesn't work, this feels a little trite, this feels stilted, you're not like, but I'm a genius. You're like, okay, why? Let's work on it.
Yeah. No, seeing it as like okay, this isn't a note against you. It's not a note against even necessarily the work. It's the way that they're coming across it and experiencing the work.
I mean, don't get me wrong. You're going to get producers and you're going to get people that just give notes to give notes, and you're going to get bad notes. That is just something that happens. But at the end of the day, you want to make it as a writer. I'm not saying you specifically. I'm saying in general, like me. Yeah. I want to be a working writer in this industry. I want to make a living as a writer. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to learn to take notes, even the crappy ones. Yeah. You know, and it becomes, and the better you take the notes, the more you're going to hear yes. Because they start to learn to trust you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't become, I have to be super heavy-handed with this person because they're not giving me what I want. It's, okay, I trust that they're going to give me something that I think is going to work. And then if this doesn't work, I feel bad, but I'm going to tell them, and then we're going to come up with a solution. I am working on another project that I'm very excited about. I can't talk about. 10 drafts.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, 10 drafts. Okay. And it, like, sometimes it's exhausting because I'm like, will the notes ever end? Yeah. But it's also because so many people are excited about this script that it keeps going up to higher and higher people, and so they keep giving other notes. And so the way I think of it is that they would, if they weren't so excited about this script and planning on like taking it to really cool places, they would not care as much as they do. And so that's what takes me through my draft 10, where I'm like, okay, does this work? Can we get through?
So now it's kind of like they're like, all right, we can make this perfect if we go through this so many times.
This is already very good, but we want to make it so good nobody can say no.
Yeah.
Because we are paying you to do this work, and we love it, and we want to make it as big as possible.
Yeah. Are you allowed to say if it's a property or independent thing that like you're working
with? It is an original IP. That's all I can really say.
That's fine.
But there's a couple things like that. I'm very excited. I'm working I have a full-time staff writer job that I also work on. Again, I can't talk about it. Hopefully in a couple months I can. Awesome. But it's a very cool IP in a very interesting different format that I didn't ever expect to be working on. And I feel like each one of these projects is so different that I'm learning something with each one. So, you know, it's not a comic book, it's not a podcast, it's not a video. Like there's all these different things that I get to work on now. And I feel like working at Power Rangers and doing everything I did prepared me for that, because I used to just work in television. And now as a writer, I get to work in so many different medias, not just television, even though that's also part of what I do. But it's opened up so much more avenues of revenue for me, and also opportunities to tell cool stories.
Yeah,
And
sounds
comics is
like
one
it.
of them. If it wasn't for Power Rangers, I don't think I ever would have gotten into comics because I wouldn't have had made these connections with Kyle, with Daphne, with all these other people that have put me in that position to be able to get these jobs to make these books.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to tell this awesome story.
Exactly.
It
And
wouldn't
it
exist.
wouldn't have happened without Kyle, and Power
Yeah.
Rangers wouldn't have happened without Dead Lucky, because Dead Lucky proved I could write a comic book.
Yeah.
That allowed Boom to say, hey, she can write a comic book. Maybe she can
Yeah.
take on Power Rangers.
And they already knew from working with you that you knew Power Rangers.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I know Power Rangers pretty well. It's been a couple years. I'm not gonna lie. There's moments where I'm just like, what is that thing? Oh my god, I knew this. What is that thing? And then I have to sit there and look up at the wiki.
Yeah.
Like I edited together the franchise Bible 6 years ago, and now I can't remember anything. I'm getting old.
We'll just say, shh. You never said that. You know it all. You know all of Power Rangers. Those words never happened.
Oh no! I can't ever, because then like the minute you say you know everything, somebody's gonna find a thing that you don't know.
Be that super fan out there.
And they're always gonna know more than me, because they love the franchise so much. I remember one time somebody they asked like, "Hey, we think this will be really fun." I think it was the marketing team. Like, if you go up and do a trivia contest against a super fan, and I'm like, "No, they're going to win. I'm never going to beat them.
That'd be fun for me."
They're going to be humiliated. No, thank you. Just do it with them.
Oh, when you're able to talk about some of these other projects, and then maybe that'll be around the time Radiant Pink is coming out. You're welcome to come back, and we'll
and I'm not done with comics. I mean, I love this medium, and I would love to be able to do more of them. I'm doing 3 right now, and that's plenty right now. But like, I would love to do more, and I'm just obsessed with this medium, and you can't get me out of it now. Like, I'm gonna try my hardest because I just love it so much. I mean, I go
stay in the medium.
I go to, every Wednesday I go to my comic book shop and come home with a pile of comics, and my girlfriend gets really mad at me because I never have time to read them. And like, I even went to C2E2 and I came back with this box with a commission drawing of Dead Lucky.
Nice.
And then
who did that
incredible one? These incredibly fun, Something is Killing the Children, this very rare foil variant. And then I got this incredible retailer commission, and I got the artist to sign it.
I saw him, and then I think I saw you repost it. But
I even got these are my special books. I even got the Blacklight edition of Radiant Black. I am obsessed, and this is something that I will never ever stop being obsessed with. So
I think I have isn't there a Radiant Black cover it's pretty similar to this Dead Lucky cover?
Yeah, there's 4. There's a Rogue Sun one, and there's an Inferno Girl Red one too.
I may have the Rogue Sun one. I gotta check. My room is a mess of comics everywhere. This is the comics I haven't read this week, and that's the comics I have read this week.
I love it. What's on your pull list for this week?
Let's see what I got. I haven't read here.
Tiger's Tongue
from Mad Cave.
Astronaut Down. The Ward. I haven't read any of these. I'm really excited to hear. Okay. I heard about this one. 8 Billion Genies.
Fantastic. It's probably the next one I'm going to read.
Oh, wow.
My one Marvel one this week.
Oh, that would be fun.
I read all of the Miss Marvel books. They're always a good time.
Yeah.
And she her first team up was with Wolverine in her first volume.
Oh, how fun. And that's very cool. Mindset.
Yeah, Zach Kaplan.
Wow.
Josh Pearson from Vault.
That's very cool.
This whole stack up here.
Dark
Beach.
From Behemoth. Okay.
Michael J. Ruiz Unger. Sebastian Perez is the artist on it too.
Oh wow.
I love his artwork. He did it's another Vault book that he's on. We Ride Titans.
Patrick, there's something wrong with I don't know any of these books. I feel terrible. I have to read them all. They all look so cool.
This one is, oh god, I had such a fun time.
Samurai Doggy.
Chris Tex and Santos.
Oh my god!
Like,
all right, I have
this
to check these stuff out.
poor dog, like traumatized. His mom is killed in front of him.
So it's
And
like
then
John Wick, except if the dog went on on revenge.
there is a book that's actually that though. Good Boy. Um,
I read Stray Dogs recently, and that like haunted my dreams.
oh my god,
But
yes. So we had the creators for Stray Dogs on here like right before like the third issue, which was the one where like your heart just gets pulled from your chest and stomped on. And they're kind of like, you're not ready, you're not ready. And we're like, how bad could it get?
pretty bad. Pretty bad.
It got so bad. Yeah.
The writer, and I forget his name. I was actually at Comic-Con and I wanted to
Yeah,
get the
Tony.
Stray Dogs Dog Days variant that was Comic-Con exclusive. And so I was there at the Image booth and he happened to be there right at that time and he signed my variant cover for me and I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. Tony's cool. Trish is cool. The artist on it. They both do art.
Space Lady.
This is
This comic contains rude words like
another one from Behemoth has some like crazy books, which I love the kind of out there stuff.
I love it.
This is a smaller publisher, Clover Press.
Candies.
Cassidy's Secret. This was the last issue.
Okay.
Antonio Fuso did art on, I don't remember how to say it. It's Wired or Weird from Dark Horse.
Slumber.
Or from Image.
Very cool.
Redman, which
Redman.
like, you know, Ultraman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like from that. It's the same creator of
is it?
Ultraman.
Wow.
Yeah. There's probably a couple covers there for that. And then this one, we had the creative team on last week.
With Lime. Oh, that's a cool title.
Yeah, so plague in the 1600s England, but instead of people dying, they come back as zombies. And how do you fight off a zombie apocalypse when you don't have guns and you don't have good weaponry? I love this cover.
That is very cool. Oh my god.
The plague doctors pretty much become the guy who's like stopping these dying.
I have to read that. That sounds incredible. That's why I love comics though, because you can tell these incredibly like weird, crazy stories without having to work about demographics and budget and like who is gonna buy it. Like or who's gonna air it on which network. You can just tell a freaking good story.
That's why I like as you can tell from this pile, there was one Marvel comic.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything DC. Well, this was free, but it's
Sandman.
It's like a reprint of issue 1. Have you seen
the show?
Not yet, because unfortunately I am a terrible human being and have not read Sandman.
I didn't.
But I have this.
I have the omnibus that I keep meaning to read, but I just went and watched it and it was really good. So I'm excited to read the book.
I told myself I'd read the book 1 before I would go and watch it.
Yeah. I don't read as many Marvel books, I've noticed. I read a lot of DC.
This was the last one.
The Deadliest Bouquet. Oh, man, Image has such good stuff.
Yeah. And that one actually, if I remember where I put it, here it is. It was a Kickstarter that they did.
Oh, wow.
So I've read the whole thing, but I wanted to, support them and pick up the single release too, because it's a good story. Well,
thank you for these recs. I'm really excited now. I'm going to go to the comics book store tomorrow and see if I can find some of these.
Buy them out of all their comics.
They used to laugh at me when I did that for Radiant Black because it was I had backups in Radiant Black and I'd never been in a comic before, other than at the very end special things for Melissa for Power Rangers.
Yeah,
and they'd be like, "Are you gonna come and buy all our books?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't get comps for this one, so probably." But I have one DC. There's a couple DC ones I got. I got Poison Ivy, which is
I need to read Poison Ivy.
It's really good. Like, I freaking love Poison Ivy as a character. That one's good. And then the DC versus zombies, or no, the DC versus those vampires.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, this one. That.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I also have Nightmare Country, and then I always check out the number ones. but like, so the new Shazam, that's what I got. And then The Closet.
Yes, that was fantastic.
And then Grimm. And then Public Domain. So those were the ones that were on my list so far.
Yeah. Public Domain has been fantastic. Grimm.
Yeah.
I've been loving Grimm.
So, I'm excited. I'm just like super behind. And then Jeremy Adams, who's my buddy, writes The Flash. And he writes it really, really well. So I also pick up The Flash.
I feel like with when I was like growing up, the characters that I saw a lot. I didn't read comics until I was an adult. But the characters I would see a lot were more Marvel. And so I think when I go to look at DC Comics, I never know what characters are going to resonate with me.
Yeah. We have demons.
Cool. That was a good
and then
one.
Nice House on the Lake. I'm also obsessed with.
So. I love that.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me with DC, like with Marvel. Like I like Marvel, but for some reason, I think the only one that I really just got really obsessed with was Tom Taylor again.
Yeah.
His Mighty Wolverines run with X-22. I really loved that run. But otherwise, I tend to like gravitate more toward DC books, except for the Star Wars Marvel books. I like those.
Yeah. I was just looking because they're out of reach, but I did just pick up Tom Taylor's Nightwing.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have that one too.
So I've got the 2 hardcover trades of it, so that's on my to read list.
Nice.
I'm gonna do the same with his Superman.
The Son of Kal-El. Yeah, that one's really good. Actually, it's fun to read.
I've heard such good things.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a nice guy too. He did Power Rangers versus DC for us. Or Justice League, Power Rangers versus Justice League, or the crossover that we did, the miniseries.
Yeah,
it was so much fun to work with him on that. It was so good.
One of my friends ran into him. I think it was San Diego Comic-Con, and just like he was so nice when they would talk to him.
Such a good dude. He's such a good dude. Like I will sing his praises all day long. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of at the end of the hour here.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on and talking about everything that you're working on. And now,
sorry, it devolved into what comics are you reading?
Oh, I mean, I don't mind. I love seeing what creators are reading, right? Yeah. What are the things that you guys are out there looking at and consuming while also creating? Yeah. I feel like that helps see how you're thinking, what books you enjoy, and maybe I'll see something that I haven't read and want to pick up too.
Yeah. Well, it's really funny because the books that I read, like none of them I think are in the same vein as Dead Lucky, but that's what I like about them, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because I'm always just like astounded by other writers' brains and the stories that they come up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to take a step away from the content that you're making too.
Yeah. Well, it's the same reason, I watch a lot of like really dark horror stuff on TV, but I'm not really a horror writer. So I want to be one day. I remember one time I got asked, when I got hired for this job, like, do you want to do horror or comedy? And I was like, horror. And like, have you done horror? I'm like, no, but I bet I could be really good at it. They're like, oh, let's give you action. I'm like, okay, fine.
Okay. Where can people follow you and see what you've got coming up?
I am most active on Twitter and Instagram, Misty_Flores, and you can find all my info on both of those pages.
Yeah, and I should have the links to those down here. So go check those out.
Cool. And then I will probably be at Powermorphicon this coming at the end of this month, and I'm also speaking at a podcast conference in a couple weeks. So those are my next appearances.
Sounds like a fun time.
I have to fly to Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's going to be hot.
maybe not as fun time.
We'll see. We'll make it fun.
Yeah.
But I had so much fun here. Thank you so much for having me and letting me ramble on.
Oh, yeah.
Different stuff.
The more you talk, the less I have to talk. But thanks to the people in the chat watching live and anyone catching this again later on the replay. And have a nice night, everybody.